And I think that's a good segue into your new book, Light of the Mind, Light of the World, Illuminating Science Through Faith. And you tell us in that, Spencer, that this divergence that has taken place between science and faith, particularly the Christian faith, is a false dichotomy. And you argue that it need not lead to a godless world, the pursuit of science and scientific truths, and in fact may lead us back to him being God. Maybe describe that for us.
Yeah, I'd be happy to. And in fact, I will grab that. I now have physical copies of this book, which is always such an exciting moment. So if you're watching, you can see this book, which comes out a week from when we're talking. It may already be out when this is released. I don't know. But Amazon is the place to get it. Light of the Mind, Light of the World. And yeah, this is a story that means a lot to me. This is a history of science in a few short and hopefully exciting chapters. And it tells that story because I think we need to understand that story in order to realize how it was that the world started to look like a dead machine, how it seemed plausible for a time that everything we need to know, everything that can be known, is contained in natural science and material truth. And what's interesting is that that conviction arose at first out of a religious project. The scientific enterprise was a religious project. It contained explicit religious presuppositions, like, for instance, that the universe is rationally ordered according to a plan that also exists in miniature within the human mind. There's no reason to think that. No reason to think that the universe will answer our questions about it if you just think that our brains were evolved haphazardly to deal with our immediate surroundings. We're perfectly well capable to face a lion or a rainstorm. Those are the things that we evolved to deal with. But we also think that we are somehow equipped to deal with space travel and asteroid showers and life on Mars. Why do we think that? Or why, for instance, do we think that we will ultimately figure out how quantum gravity works, how special relativity and quantum gravity interact with one another? Because somewhere in our distant ancestral memory, guys like Isaac Newton and Johannes Kepler and even Galileo believed that we were made in the image of God, so that our brains are not simply reactive tools for dealing with the kinds of situations we happen to find ourselves in, but blueprints or microcosms of the world at large. And basically, I argue in this book that idea became a sort of victim of its own success, that once Newton blew open the door to mechanical explanations of planetary motion and apples falling from trees and all the stuff we know about, it became very tempting to conclude, although Newton himself did not conclude this, but some of his interpreters did conclude, that everything can be explained like a machine. And if everything can be explained like a machine, there's really no place for mind or consciousness or God. And in fact, Pierre-Simon Laplace, of course, it was the French that did this. Pierre-Simon Laplace, one of Newton's greatest ever inheritors, said that if you knew the position and velocity of every particle at any given instant, you would be able to see past, present, and future all linked together in this perfect determinist chain. So that's the idea of the world that they came up with eventually over the course of the 18th and 19th centuries, and it worked its way into the public psyche. All the while, science was proving Laplace wrong. And this is the kind of trick ending at the end of this story. The surprise ending is that idea of the world as a machine, which we've got kind of baked into our public mythos now, has been totally surpassed by things like quantum physics and relativity, which actually reveal a fundamental ingredient of the universe to be mind. And so the book explores the consequences of that. And I think you end up with a picture of the world that looks a lot like the one in Genesis, that you have raw potential that is quantum superposition or something like it, some, reality, some material reality that is outside of its contact with mind, meeting with mind when the Spirit of God broods over the waters and bursting forth into these like shapes and forms that then find their answer in the human mind, which is made in the image of God. So that's the argument of the book, told as a story of the history of science. And I think we are on the cusp, really, of a revival here, or at least we need a revival, and that it is possible. I've been reading lately in the book of Chronicles the story of King Hezekiah, who comes just before the Babylonian exile, and he revives the worship of Adonai, the one God, when it has fallen into terrible disrepair. As you mentioned, as you were talking about the effects of nihilism on cities, which I saw too in Los Angeles, I was thinking about Hezekiah, because he too comes of age, comes to power in a city that has fallen into disrepair. It bears all of the marks, this sort of rampant poverty, unaddressed or poorly addressed, the execution of infants, which it's my belief we also perpetrate en masse in the modern West, but also apostasy, also all this stuff. And he comes back to power. And one of the most interesting things that first happens is that he celebrates Passover late. And the text makes a really sort of a big deal out of this. And I think the reason it's doing that is it's trying to convey, these dates for high festivals are very serious commandments of law in the Torah. When you celebrate Passover, all the different, obligations, religious obligations that we incur. But the picture of revival that we get in Chronicles kind of says, yeah, but you start from where you're at, right? So maybe we hope that one day, like, everybody will be reciting the Apostles' Creed and worshiping Jesus, and but right now we're in the sort of postmodernist wasteland and wreckage, and it's going to take time and compromise to move from there, to meet people where they're at and build back to a sort of revival. And I think one route in, there's the political route in, which people like Ayan Hirsi Ali are taking, saying, our social structures need Christianity. But there's also the scientific route in, which says, look, science itself needs religion to make sense as it needs its first principles, and is trending toward a vision of the world that looks like religion. You don't have to give up your rationality or your just basic good sense, your belief in reality, in order to be a religious person. In fact, just the opposite. You might need religion now to make sense of the truth.
I think you're right about that revival, and it seems to be coming from two ways that I've seen it anyway. In Britain, we're very lucky to have the most wonderful scholar, Dr. Ian McGilchrist, who has written The Master and His Emissary about what the divided brain is, and the implications of becoming too left hemispheric and not right hemispheric enough, and how they're meant to talk to each other. And I won't butcher that in a summary, but also The Matter with Things, which you wrote 1,400 pages, effectively railing against what you've outlined, which is, we are not machines, and here are all the ways that we are not. And this is,
he's in this book. McGilchrist gets a quote in this book. Yeah. It's wonderful. The Matter with Things is a wonderful and magisterial work.